I'll tell you when we're ready. We're live now, Chair.
Okay, well, good evening, councillors and viewers. Welcome to this meeting of the Communities and Environment Committee. We're due to, ideally, we should finish by 8:30. There are 6 items on the agenda, which is, roughly, I work out to 25 minutes an item. So if we can try and keep to that, it would be helpful, rather than sort of going over, extending the meeting. There are, if we can start off with the apologies, please, Jason.
I've just had apologies from Councillor Froggatt.
And substitute? Is there a substitute, Jason?
There is. It's Councillor Donnelly. But he's
Councillor
not
Donnelly,
here yet.
okay.
Oh, hang on. He's just arrived. Hang on. Yeah, he's here now. So Councillor Donnelly is the substitute.
Okay, thank you. Can we start off with the roll call then, please, Jason, to make sure we're all here?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Butler.
I'm here.
Councillor Ball.
Yeah.
Councillor Mark.
Yeah, if that's me.
Yeah. Councillor Donnelly.
Oh, yes, here.
Yeah. Councillor Finesse.
Here.
Councillor Gamble.
Here.
Councillor Hobson.
Here.
Councillor Hughes.
Here.
Councillor Lee.
Here.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah.
Councillor Pawley.
Here.
Councillor Purdy.
Here.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Here.
Councillor Statham.
Yeah.
Councillor Sutton.
Here.
Councillor Wayne.
Present.
And Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, I'm here.
Right, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Next item, item 3, is the minutes. I presume everybody's read these. Can somebody move them as a true and accurate record?
Move that, Chair.
Yeah,
Second.
yeah, second.
Can we have a hands up vote, please, for approval? Thank you. Item 4 is public participation. We have a number of statements and questions here. So can we start off with, they should be shown on the screen, I think. The first one is from Mark Williamson of Ashbourne. That's the statement. Members will have seen it beforehand. The response, I've been asked to read these. The officer reporter sought to summarise the traffic data presented by ACOM as part of the consultation process. This is a standard approach in presenting reports to committee. This allows members of the District Council to understand the key issues and to assist them in coming to view on the recommendations being made. It does not, however, stop any member of the Council if they wish to see more detailed data and use that to aid their understanding and considerations on the options available. Derbyshire County Council have invited the District Council to comment upon the options they are consulting on for potential options for resolving the traffic problems in Ashbourne Town Centre. The report allows members of the District Council to have their say on the options being put forward. Any comments made by the District Council will be taken into account by the County Council in assessing how to take this matter forward. The District Council is not making any decisions on the potential options. That will be undertaken by Derbyshire County Council following the completion of this consultation exercise. It is wholly appropriate that this important issue is debated in public by the District Council. The next is a statement from David Osborne of Ashbourne. I believe David is going to read this himself. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
We've got to go ahead then, Davey, please.
Okay, yeah, well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to read this statement, which relates to the need for additional investigation and analysis before recommendations are made into any proposed bypass. I'd like to ask the committee to further investigate the option of an eastern bypass, as I feel a number of key issues have been overlooked, including alternative eastern routes, which we do have for the western option. In particular, I believe more work should be done to look at the traffic flows in relation to modelling. Based on the potential for the housing development on the airfield site, it would seem logical that a significant amount of additional traffic would emanate from that area, meaning that an eastern route would be far more effective in diverting traffic away from the town. Although longer, the cost difference should also be investigated, as length of road is not the only determining factor here. And the topography and geology of the western route could prove problematic and costly to navigate. It appears that current recommendations are based on very basic investigation and also overlook a number of key issues with the western option, some of which relate to government guidance. A bypass affects the long-term future of Ashbourne and deserves more thorough investigation before decisions and recommendations are made. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The response to that is the decisions about which route to be taken will be one for Derbyshire County following the completion of this current public consultation exercise. If you feel, Mr. Osborne, that further work should be undertaken on traffic flows, you should direct them to the County Council as part of the consultation process. Thank you. And thank you for coming along to put that forward.
Thank you very much.
The next question is from Darren Archer, also of Ashbourne. Can that go on the screen, please? Thank you. He's got several questions here. So as a response, the answer to the first question is, it is acknowledged that an eastern bypass will remove traffic from the town centre. However, the evidence on page 6 of the appendix to this report indicates that within the town centre, there is greater relief from the town centre by virtue of a western bypass than an eastern bypass. If Mr. Archer has an alternative view, he has the opportunity to make his comments directly to Derbyshire Council. And question 2, you can see there. And the answer to that is, it is accepted that the topography of a western route may have an impact upon cost. However, from experience, it is considered that even taking such factors into account, the additional length of the eastern route would result in it being more costly. Question 3, if you can get that up, thank you. And the answer to that one is, this information is derived from discussions with the County Council and is a statement of understanding rather than based on detailed assessment. I cannot advise whether the existing roundabout to which Mr. Archer refers is capable of handling the additional traffic. And question 4, please put that up. The answer is, as Mr. Archer will be aware, there is no detailed plan for a bypass route around Ashbourne. The report seems to set out seeks to set out concerns about the impact of any eastern route on the deliverability of the whole of the allocation in the adopted Derbyshire Dales local plan. On the basis of the indicative position of the link through the site, it does not mean that any final eastern route would definitely prejudice the development of the allocation in the adopted Derbyshire Dales local plan, but it could certainly cause uncertainty and delay. And then question 5, please. And the answer to that is, the evidence about the extent to which traffic using Windmill Lane, as presented on page 6 of Appendix 1, would have greater relief by an eastern bypass than compared to a western bypass was taken into account during the preparation of the report. The impact on residents of any such changes is a detailed matter that will need to be addressed as part of the submission of evidence to accompany the planning application. Next is a statement from Robert Donnelly, a resident of Ashbourne. And the response to that is, Mr. Donnelly's comments are noted. It will be for members to come to a view based upon the contents of the report and their own consideration of the evidence as to whether the report is misleading and whether an alternative response should be given. There's the next is a question from, he's got several questions from Mr. Peter Dobbs, also of Ashbourne. So the answer to this is, thank you for your questions, Mr. Dobbs. Members are aware of the issue of air quality through the inclusion of an item in the Environmental Health Service Plan, which is approved by members. The inclusion of an action in the corporate plan, which is approved by members, and the annual publication of an air quality report, which is available for all to view on the council's website. Ashbourne members receive reports every month, updating them as to the results obtained from the diffusion tubes sited within the town. Members will also be aware of the questions submitted by you and others, and the replies offered in response. In future, members will be presented with a report that details the issue of air quality in Ashbourne, including the detailed assessment that has now been procured. The declaration of air quality management areas is a responsibility that is reserved to committee and members, and members will be asked to make a decision as to whether or not an air quality management area should be declared once all the necessary information is collected. I've also asked officers to arrange a workshop session for members so that they can better understand the council's role in this area of work. I am aware of the tragic death of Ella Kissi-Deborah and of the ongoing inquest. Whilst the issue of air quality in Ashbourne is of importance, I believe that it is reasonable to state that the general air quality in our area is likely to be significantly better than the average in Lewisham. I understand that our officers have been taking advice on the matter directly from the DEFRA Air Quality Help Desk, and I do not accept that our progress has been glacially slow. That's all the questions, and those are the responses. Thank you very much. Do any members have any declarations of interest on items on the agenda?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Which item is that, Councillor?
It's the Derbyshire Clause. I have a property with it on.
Okay, thank you very much. Any
Chair.
other declarations?
Councillor Wayne.
Yeah, what is the, on which item, Councillor?
It's item 8. I wish to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 8 as I'm a member of the Matlock Town Council. I've been advised by the monitor officer that I will be able to vote on the matter. I just wanted to flag up the interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. There are no member questions. I understand, Jason, is that correct?
Yeah, there's a couple more members with hands up.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, I need to declare an interest on item 8 as well, as I'm a member of Matlock Town Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other declarations?
Councillor Buckler, Chair.
Thanks. As a member of Matlock Town Council, I would also like to declare an interest in item 8.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other declarations? No. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item is member questions, but I believe there are none. Is that correct, Jason?
We have not received any, Chair.
No. Okie doke. So the next item is the Ashborne Bypass. Paul, would you like to sort of lead us in on that one?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Well, as the report advises, this is making members aware of a public consultation exercise which is being initiated by Derbyshire County Council on the potential options for an Ashbourne bypass. I think the critical point to make at this stage is that the District Council is not the decision maker in respect of this bypass or the proposals. We are merely being asked for our opinion in the same way that members of the public and other organisations will also have an opportunity to submit their views. The key consideration from the District Council's point of view is that clearly we have given long-standing support for an Ashbourne bypass. Indeed, there is reference to it in the adopted local plan and has been in previous local plans as well, because the District Council has for a number of years acknowledged the significant pressures of increased traffic congestion within the town centre itself and the deleterious impacts that that has upon the fabric of the town. So from the point of view of being supportive in principle of a bypass, what this report seeks to look at is the options presented by the County Council from a District Council perspective. The report identifies that there are 4 options presented by the County Council. The first 2 options are largely discounted in the consultation document, and we've focused upon options 3 and options 4. Now, option 3 promotes a western bypass, and there are 2 potential alignments indicated there. Route A, which goes for a length of 2,800 metres, and Route B for a length of 2,100 metres. Option 4 is for an eastern bypass of a length of approximately 5,300 metres, and clearly that does have an impact upon the Ashbourne airfield allocation in the local plan and also the development which will be taking place there. The report, as I say, seeks to identify the considerations from a district council point of view, and it does acknowledge that there will be differing views and opinions. However, we've approached it from the perspective of what we feel is the most appropriate route for the district council to support, and on that basis, it is the officer's view that the western bypass is the most appropriate. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. I can't see anything on my screen, James. Can you give me some indication?
Yes, Councillor Ratcliffe and then Councillor Martin Burford, Chairman.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your report, Paul. Interesting to read. I know some of this information might be contained within the report, but just for the benefit of everybody and anybody watching, as it were, I'd like you to confirm and acknowledge that this remains a purely speculative proposal by the County Council, heavily dependent upon Department of Transport funding, and that the District Council, despite its support within the local plan, will have no call on its finances. That's our first question.
I'm happy to respond to that, Chair. Councillor Ratcliffe's absolutely right. There is no committed funding for this particular scheme, albeit from the Department of Transport or indeed the County Council, to the best of my knowledge. Clearly, once an option is identified by the County Council, no doubt that will progress through detailed design and costing phases, and it is not anticipated that the District Council will be asked for any funding as a contribution towards that. Clearly, if that situation were to change, we would bring that back to members for a formal decision.
My second question, Paul, is perhaps a little speculative on my part, but might we reasonably assume that the Peak District National Park could be a potential objector to elements of these bypass proposals?
I'm not aware of whether the National Park is intending to respond to this consultation. Clearly, they have an opportunity to do so, but both of the routes identified will have an impact on the National Park. So I would be surprised if they did not take the opportunity to express a view at this stage.
Yep, very clear, Paul. And my final question, you will be aware, as I am, that a parcel of land that the County Council make available for us was withdrawn in I'm going back now, 16? Can't remember now, so long ago, because of the proposals for these bypasses. Neither of them intrude into that land or require use of it. Can you tell me with any knowledge, as it were, why it is that the County Council still hold on to this land?
Yes, Chair. Paragraph 3.6 does make reference to this within the report, and certainly the discussions that we've had with the County Council to date have been on the basis that they wanted to ensure that that land was not prejudiced, or the future use of that land was not prejudiced in any way such that it would frustrate the implementation of any proposed bypass for Ashbourne. The indicative routes which form part of this consultation do not appear to impact on that land. And that is the point that we have reiterated within the report.
Thank you very much for your answers, Paul.
Councillor Burford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to welcome this report from the Chief Executive as well. I have no problems with recommendations 1 and 2, but I'm rather puzzled by recommendation 3. And I just wonder what exactly, what mitigation measures exactly officers have in mind that should be implemented as soon as possible in the centre of Ashbourne, because I can't see anything that hasn't already been done. I don't think much has already been done, but I can't really envisage anything that could possibly be done in order to mitigate this problem apart from a bypass. So can the Chief Executive just address that, please? And I've got a second question as well.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The recommendation is merely advising of the fact that the District Council acknowledges the significant impacts upon Ashbourne as a result of the traffic through the town at this moment in time. And as has been reported to members on previous occasions, there is regularly air monitoring undertaken within the locality of the A515. What this report envisages is that at some point, clearly, there will be a need to evaluate what measures may be capable of being implemented. I don't have any measures which I can advise members of at the present time, but we are merely flagging our concern as part of this recommendation, such that in the period between now and whenever this bypass may be implemented, the current situation cannot continue ignored.
Thank you. Could I ask a second question then, please, relating to what Councillor Ratcliffe has just asked about paragraph 3.6 and the traveller site that's been identified in the local plan. I can't understand why it's assumed that the position of County Council in regard to the availability of this site remains unchanged. And if it does, then can officers and senior members not approach the County Council again and say, why is this the case? Because if it doesn't impact, if the bypass route doesn't impact on the proposed traveller site, then I can't understand for the life of me why they couldn't enter into further discussions to possibly open up that piece of land as a potential traveller site again.
Well, those discussions have taken place prior to this consultation being launched, and clearly we weren't aware of the options for the bypass alignment that were going to be shown as part of this consultation. I'm more than happy to take that issue up again with the County Council. It hasn't been done since this consultation was launched, but I'm happy to do so should members wish me to do that.
Well, thank you.
Councillor Buckler.
Yes. Strangely, my questions are the opposite way around to Councillor Burford's. I find it easily support recommendation 3, have more difficulty supporting recommendations 1 and 2. The Ashbourne Town team, the traffic group of the Ashbourne Town team have recently presented a report to Simon Spencer outlining a series of potential options for mitigation through the town centre, and it'd be good to know that we support their report and their proposals. And one of the other issues, one of those particularly relates to speeding on routes when there isn't a traffic issue. And so can we see what's being done to address speeding when there isn't a traffic issue? When we're not talking about volume of traffic. And obviously today the inquest on Ella Kizzy Deborah did come out today, which said that air quality was a significant issue. And we are the people who have a responsibility to declare an air quality an IQMA for Buxton Road to address the illegal nitrous oxide levels. Are we going to be doing something? Are we going to be declaring an AQMA?
I'm going to bring Tim Braund in on the second question in a moment, if I may. In regard to the first point, clearly there are numerous issues and impacts arising from the traffic situation in Ashbourne, and we've approached this very much from the basis of we have been invited to submit views in respect of this particular set of proposals. If the District Council chooses not to support either route, that is an option that you could take, but officers have approached this from the premise that the local plan does provide the degree of support, and of the options presented on the table, we consider that the western route would be most appropriate based upon the information that is currently available. But Tim, can I bring you in on the second point, please, because you're far more knowledgeable on that than I am.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, no problem. Members will be aware that the issue of air quality in Ashbourne's debate being discussed before, certainly in relation to questions that have been submitted. The monitoring that's done there is done by something called passive diffusion tubes, which are an indicative form of monitoring rather than something that's 100% accurate. In consultation with the DEFRA help desk, air quality help desk, we've procured what's called a detailed assessment, which is looking at the results we've got, doing some additional monitoring, mapping exercises, looking at whether any additional pollutants need to be monitored. That's been procured very recently and should be undertaken shortly. When we've got timescales for that, I'm happy to let members know what they will be. When that work's been done, then a report will be submitted to committee for determination as to whether an AQMA should be declared or not. At this stage, it's that we don't have enough information to say that an AQMA should be declared.
Okay, Councillor Purdy, we're still on questions, Councillor.
No, if you leave me for debate, then thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Just reading the report, and the Eastern bypass, it concerns me that we've got Derbyshire County Council and Derbyshire Dales District Council supposedly working together, but one of the main obstructions will be it could impact the development up on the top of Buxton Hill, not Buxton Hill, the Airfield Industrial Estate. First question is there no collaborative liaison between the two? Did one not know what the other's intentions were? That's the first question. The second question, I did write to Mr. Braund earlier on in the week in relation to Buxton Hill and in relation to the NOx levels, which are rather concerning. When the level's 40, the safe level, the maximum level it should be is 40, but it's up to 70 on one of the readings on Buxton Hill. I'd like to be able to have some reassurance from Mr. Braund and others that the timescale of March 2021 is going to happen for the declaring an AQMA, and also that when we reply back to Derbyshire County Council, we make it in strong terms that there is a serious issue on this hill. Can I have some reassurance in relation to that? That's the second question. And just following on from Councillor Buckler's statement earlier, can we be confident that we are acting with all due diligence in relation to the findings of the Coroner's Court down at Southwark earlier on today? Thank you very much.
Chair, if I can take the first question, and I'll leave Tim to answer the other two. Clearly, in regard to the airfield development, we've worked very closely with Derbyshire County Council for a period of over 2 years. And, that close collaboration has involved us in the detailed design of the roundabout, which is intended to service the airfield development from an employment perspective, but also from the future residential development perspective. But what that highway design has not done is designed a roundabout which is capable of serving that significant development plus bypass traffic. That was not a consideration for a number of reasons. One, because clearly no route option had been identified at that stage. And even at this stage now, this is just an option which may not actually be taken any further once detailed design exercise is undertaken. So the capacity of that roundabout is certainly likely to require some form of enhancement if it is also to serve bypass traffic as well as the development itself. It hasn't currently been designed to meet that level of demand. Whether it could or not clearly would need to be investigated, but it's not been designed at the present time for that. Tim, if I can bring you on the other questions,
Chair,
unless Councillor Wayne's...
Mr. Wilson, can I just come back on that point, please, if that's okay with you, Chair?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So are we saying that Derbyshire County Council didn't inform you of any intention and it just come out of the blue within the last few months? Thank you.
Prior to this consultation being published, I had no prior intelligence as to what route options the County Council would be coming out with now.
Thank you.
Tim?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Chair. Well, Councillor Wayne's quite right. He did ask me a question which I responded to in detail, and we had a subsequent telephone conversation. I won't repeat everything that I put in the email or that we talked about because we'll be here all night. Suffice to say that there clearly is an issue on Buxton Hill in Ashbourne, which is why we proceeded to a detailed assessment. The levels that are monitored there relate to 2 diffusion tubes at different points on the hill. And those members who know Ashbourne will know what I'm talking about. As you go up the hill, on the left-hand side under the trees, there's a point there, and there's one further down towards the marketplace. In between those, there are 3 other monitoring tubes which show levels well below the air quality objective. So what that suggests is that there are a couple of hotspots, if you like, on the hill where pollution levels are, where pollution's collecting and levels are being monitored at a level above the air quality objective. That objective of 40 is an annual average rather than an instantaneous reading or a monthly average. So comparing one month's readings to that is not really an appropriate way to go about things. However, it clearly indicates that there's an issue. The detailed assessment that we brought in will tell us how extreme that issue is and over what area it's likely to extend, which will enable us to declare an air quality management area if that's the right thing to do. As the name suggests, an air quality management area does have to have an area rather than just be a point. We can't go declaring about one thing. The target timescale for that is the end of March. That's certainly what officers would like to, when officers would like to get the work completed. We're hopeful. Things have been disrupted, as so many things have this year, but we're hopeful that the consultants will be able to complete the work within that timescale and will be able to come back to committee. What I said earlier, I think in response to Councillor Buckler's question, was that I'm happy to let members know a timescale when I've got that, and I'll stick by that. I'll email you all and let you know what that timescale is likely to be.
Chair, can I just come back on one thing, please?
Yes, that's okay.
Just a point made earlier in the answer to one of the questions, I think it was from Mr. Dobbs, I'm not sure. It was just in relation to the air quality. I don't know. I mean, I've got an interest because I know Ashbourne quite well, but I'm just wondering if the councillors from the Peak Park areas do know or do read the ASR and are kept up to date in relation to the levels, because I find it very difficult to keep up to date with everything, and I'm sure others do. So the councillors are being informed. I don't honestly think, it's going to be, there's so many other things to be doing. I don't think we can be kept informed with everything. So I can't think that was given as a response that councillors are aware. I think it only goes, some of these responses only go to Ashbourne Town Council. So there may be very few. It's just an observation, but thank you very much for your time.
Councillor Gamble.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, a couple of things that come out. How we got to the position of a bypass actually being sort of a route coming up that affected one of our areas, and yet County Council didn't apparently tell us, and why didn't you, once you knew, ask them to sort of wait for consultation till you'd had a chance to look at this and look at any sort of detailed work that would need to be done with the route? So a consultation would actually take place with a detailed route. I would have thought that was fairly sort of something that was needed for a consultation. And also, can I just ask a question going back to some points I think that Mr. Dobbs has made before? I mean, we seem to be in a position where there have been measurements taken for 3 years. So if those measurements were never going to be good enough, I just wonder why, when we first started to get there, why didn't we actually employ someone for this exercise to take place then? So we could be a lot further down the road than we are now. That was it, really. The other things have been answered. Thank you.
I'll take the first point. The County Council have made no secret of the fact that they have been intent on looking at options for a bypass for Ashbourne, and there's been various public pronouncements on that, certainly over the last 2 or 3 years. The precise form of that consultation is clearly for the County Council to determine. As I've just answered to Councillor Wayne, the District Council were not engaged beforehand in terms of the likely options that would be coming out. I can understand why the County Council have not undertaken detailed design of the option routes that have been published this time round, because that is an extremely time-consuming and costly exercise to undertake, and you wouldn't normally do that detailed design in advance if you identify the preferred route that you want designing. So I can totally understand the way the County Council have gone about that, but really that's a question for them to determine as to how they choose to undertake the consultation that they have, rather than the District Council. We are merely responding to what's been presented to us. But Tim, can I pass to you for the other question, please?
Yeah, no problem. It's going to be a rather lengthy answer, I'm afraid. I'll have nothing left to tell you in a workshop eventually. We have a network of nitrogen dioxide monitoring points across the district. They're all passive diffusion tubes, which is a good way of getting an indication of whether there's a problem in a particular area. It's a cheap form of monitoring that means we can cover the whole of the district. We'd move those points around from time to time in order to make sure that we get decent coverage. We obviously like to leave them out for a period of time to make sure we get consistency as well. So it's a bit of a moving feast where we identify spots that are likely to be important. We monitor there for a period of time, and once we're happy that they're okay, we move on to somewhere else. One of the tubes that we had cited some time ago was on Buxton Road, and that began to indicate a problem. So we had one spot on there. We consulted with the DEFRA help desk, the air quality help desk, and their suggestion was to place some more diffusion tubes in that area. So we now have 5 diffusion tubes in that area. They didn't want us to go any further towards the declaration of an air quality management area until we'd had at least 12 months readings of those additional tubes, which we now have. In consultation, that period that we were monitoring also covered the first lockdown and air pollution levels reduced. They didn't want us to go to a detailed assessment at that point because they didn't feel, and we didn't feel, that the results that we would get would be likely to be indicative of a true reading in the area when things are normal, whatever normal means. So in consultation with them, we have now procured that detailed assessment, and that work will be undertaken. This is a normal process. And if anything, we're 12 months ahead of schedule. DEFRA have told us that they would normally expect 3 years worth in total of monitoring data before we moved to thinking about the declaration of an air quality management area. And we are 12 months ahead of that. That's the truth of the situation.
Does that complete the answers? Councillor Pawley.
Yes, I'd like to come back to the funding that doesn't seem to be forthcoming for the bypasses. Could you tell me if we've got a concrete indication that the traffic going through the town is causing health problems, because we've done these the surveys of these points where it's building up and the points in between, so we've got an area that we can establish. Does that act as a spur to the government giving the go-ahead for funding for a bypass more than it would if that wasn't the case?
I think that's quite a difficult question to answer, in fairness, Mrs. Pawley, because the government changes so regularly its terms on which it will fund infrastructure. Certainly in terms of previous discussions around Ashborne Bypass, alongside colleagues at the County Council, I actually went to London to speak with the Secretary of State at that time. We're probably about 2 Secretary of States on now, to try and promote the case for Ashbourne. And the argument that we received in response was that this was a local solution that was required, which didn't actually contribute towards improving the national economy. And at that time, it was not seen to be a priority. Clearly, the situation does change, but my understanding at the moment is that the issue of air quality would not in itself be a criterion which would effectively promote Ashbourne above other competing schemes. It will be a factor, but I'm not sure that it would actually be a critical factor in determining whether it was funded or not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I recognise that in this case, Derbyshire Dales is a respondent to consultation, and therefore our knowledge is not full. but there's a level of frustration here. I heard what the members of the public said about the potential impact of traffic from the development of the airfield, and I recognise that we might not want to have an eastern bypass because it would affect the development of the airfield, and I can understand that that's quite a significant issue. My concern is really not with Derbyshire Dales and what we've done, but with my question is, do we know if the Derbyshire County Council did some traffic forecasting based on the development of the airfield, which has been in the local plan, and that as a published document for 2 years, is it now, or 3? I can't remember, and certainly it's been mooted for a longer period than that. That's my question, really, Chair.
Paul?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, the key consideration at the time that the Ashbourne airfield allocation was brought forward in the local plan was that it was always acknowledged that there would be a limit to the amount of development that could be serviced from the existing airfield estate road. And once you get beyond that limit, there was an acknowledgement that it would need a separate access point. So the District Council has been quite keen to clearly pursue that secondary access, one, to relieve the pressures that currently exist on the airfield, but also to maximise the development potential of the wider site itself. And that's why for the last 2 to 3 years we've been working with the county, and we secured the funding from the D2N2 local enterprise partnership to provide that second access. So it was dealing with an existing problem, but also managing a future development potential of the full site. But the issue of a bypass in terms of the traffic forecasting and the design of that route has not been taken into account, because prior to this consultation coming out, it was not something that we was aware of.
Can I come back on that? I mean, I was really asking about Derbyshire counties, the county's modelling, rather than perhaps modelling that was done for the airfield development. I sort of recognise that was done, and that was important that it was done. But it seems to me that we in this country make these infrastructure decisions based on historic information rather than future plans. And I sort of feel that this might be a case where this is happening, where there is a future plan to be delivered before 2030 for a lot of houses and commercial developments on the airfield site. And we don't know really whether the county has modelled that in determining which route would be the most appropriate route. I find that very curious, as the members of the public found curious. I think we need to move from a position, I think the county needs to move from a position of, I mean, it's likely that this road will not be built before the housing is built on the airfield and the commercial development happens, given that those are extant plans, and we have a date when those extant plans have to be completed. I don't know if you can comment on that, Paul. Maybe it's more of a statement than something that requires comment. I don't know.
Yeah, happy to come back, Chair. Perhaps I've not been very clear. The modelling that took place was modelling solely related to the anticipated demands arriving from the development that would occur as a result of the allocation. So yes, the County Council did undertake modelling based upon how much the estate road in its current capacity could accommodate, and then how much would be needed to be serviced by a separate access point. But at no point was any modelling undertaken which would cater for a bypass option in the vicinity of that site, because it was just not known, it was not anticipated that an eastern route would be something that would be promoted. So I think Councillor Hughes's point is entirely valid, but that extent of modelling was not done.
Sorry, Paul, I wasn't trying to get it out. I still think that it's the other way around, that having decided to have possibly have an eastern bypass or a western bypass, and then looking at doing the traffic modelling for that, the county should have taken into consideration the numbers of vehicle movements from the new development. I think I'm concerned that they're not. That's all.
I think that's a very valid point, Chair.
We've had a lot of questions and time is rolling on. Councillor Ratcliffe, have you got another question? Or is it a comment?
No questions, Chair. I was going
Okay.
to,
well, I'll come back to you then in the debate.
Yeah, that's right.
Councillor Bull, is yours a question or comment?
Comment, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll move now to Councillor Purdy. We're in the debate session now.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move the recommendations as they stand, but I'd like to make some very pertinent points, if I may. When I became leader, I approached the leader of Derbyshire County Council to ask if we could have Waterloo Lane for a permanent traveller site. We were told no. I arranged a meeting not long after that, at which Paul attended, Tim Braun attended, and Deputy Leader Councillor Sue Obson. And we met again with Councillor Lewis and Mike Ashworth. And again, we were told no. I've tackled Councillor Spencer since then at the LGA meeting in Bournemouth last year about the fact that under the previous administration, Paul actually nearly got heads of terms signed up with the previous leader for us to secure Waterloo Lane as a permanent site. So we've always been led to believe that the county wanted for this bypass. So it came as a real surprise and a sore point to me when I first read these papers and in depth looking at the maps, saw quite clearly that Waterloo Lane is not on the route. So pleased to hear Paul is happy to approach the county again, because I certainly am as leader, and ask the question again. I think this has accelerated from the demise of the Ashbourne High Street and the meetings I held last year with the town team, and I'm thankful to the town team for the work they've done, and unfortunately COVID's come in and rent their plans asunder. So recently they've submitted a traffic mitigation report, which is obviously for the county council to look at, and also air quality. Last year I visited Ashbourne Town with Sarah Dines MP, and she was appalled at the closeness of the HGV traffic. So there's two aspects to this. One, I think the first 2 points of the recommendations, Chair, in my view, are fairly semantic, because there's no money from DFT, and I don't think there will be any money from DFT in the very near future. Paul is quite right that Department of Transport look at the through routes of traffic rather than trying to alleviate a problem in a town. Now, the problem with Ashbourne Town is the fact that it's got heavy HGV traffic constantly through it. And therefore that now affects the footfall and the air quality. And so I've also tackled Simon Spencer following those two town meetings because there was a lot of hot air at those meetings about the HGV traffic through it. Councillor Spencer was at one of those meetings, and therefore I think he's took on board this particular problem, which needs addressing. And that's why I think it's important that we look at this recommendation in two aspects. 1 and 2, it's neither here nor there, which we take at the moment, because I don't think it's going to happen. Number 3 is very important. It's really important that this issue is addressed. And also I have asked twice Councillor Spencer to look at ameliorating traffic in Ashbourne with a weight limit. He informs me that he cannot do that because it would displace HGV traffic into other areas which wouldn't be able to take that traffic. And he even mentioned the fact that it would impact on Cromford, on the narrow lane, water lane in Cromford. Notwithstanding that, I do plead with Simon Spencer, Councillor Simon Spencer, to take a serious look at traffic mitigation measures in Ashbourne. So I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chair, and thank you for letting me sound off a bit.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd be very happy to second that motion, and I'm very relieved and pleased to hear that both the leader and the chief exec are happy to take up the Waterloo Lane issue. It's been a sore point, and I think there possibly is a resolution, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But the motion is seconded. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bull.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On my comments, and obviously, as how Councillor Purdy's just put it as regards to options 1 and 2, I think at the end of the day, they are there, they stand, and it isn't of worth of, you know, we choose. It all obviously has to be priced out and the likes. So, you know, and that's for it to be determined. Obviously, this consultation is just to probably give a bit of a heads up to the county council, you know, where they should start laying the money to do this feasibility study and the likes to actually implement a bypass coming in. This has been ongoing since year dot, unfortunately, as having a bypass. And the thing that we can't take away is the fact that Ashbourne Town is very close to all the quarries of 90% of the stuff that comes through the town. And obviously, because of the buildings and the likes, there just now doesn't seem to be any other route. And I have even spoke with Councillor Spencer at times and asked, you know, is there a possibility of putting weight limits or changing? And as he's asked with Councillor Purdy, he's come up with the same thing, that, well, if you're diverting from Ashbourne, then you'll probably end up going through another village. You know, it's like swings and roundabout. You take it from one to put it on somebody else. But I do feel that number 3 on the recommendation is we really do have to look a lot closer to try to put something in place to mitigate the traffic that is now happening, because as we all know, irrespective of where the route would be chosen to be, it is not going to end up being developed for quite a considerable amount of years. And at the end of the day, the town is still going to have this traffic coming through, and we do really need to be looking at something and spending a bit of money probably in trying to mitigate some of this traffic, especially the heavy goods coming through. And that's how I want to put it over. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I say, first of all, I thought Councillor Hughes's assessment of the Derbyshire County Council position was very good and to the point. And I thank Councillor Ball too for being a very strong advocate of the Ashbourne position, and of course Councillor Purdy for the Derbyshire Dales involvement in this. I think they both set out our position very well. This remains for me. I don't want to say pie in the sky, because I think that's being too pessimistic, but certainly speculative. Not least of which we have an election next year, and I've got my fingers crossed that we'll have a different administration with a different view. But one of the things that does need pushing forward is this recommendation 3. It's interesting that the government in response have said that they would favour a local scheme rather than some sort of whole-scale bypass. Now, it may be that actually the bypass is what is required, but at this moment in time, there is no money available for it. I think the other point is, of course, again, there are likely to be, very likely to be a widespread consultation amongst Ashbourne residents and its environs once the funding and detailed designs do emerge. But I can see that being a long time down the line. But at this moment in time, I'm very happy that this council has made a fair assessment on what it has been presented with at this moment in time. And so I'm supporting the recommendations.
Councillor O'Brien, I believe you have an amendment to propose.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to endorse very much the comments made by Gary Purdy and Sue Bull there. and in doing so, I'm proposing an amendment which would strengthen recommendation 3 by simply removing the words "as soon as feasibly possible," which can be interpreted in any number of ways by the county council if they choose so, and insert the word "immediately." I think that would reflect the urgency which this council considers the position, and I think that will carry far greater weight in any negotiations we have. We are aware that the county council has fairly recently been awarded the sum of £1.773 million by the government under the active travel management programme for works such as mitigation as suggested. So there is there are funds available with the county council, and I think it's up to us as a district council to press for these sorts of funds to be invested in Ashbourne in the short term. And by short term, I do mean immediately. So I'd make that recommendation to you that we replace the words "as soon as feasibly possible," but by "immediately."
Chair,
Councillor Purdy, would you like to?
I'm happy to accept that wording, Chair. So I don't think it needs an amendment as such, but amended words. So I'm happy to accept that and go with that one.
Are you okay with that, Paul?
I think I'd probably want to bring Tim in, Chair, if I may, because I think the issue is, what those immediate works would comprise, because the County Council will clearly need to have some awareness of the scale of the issue that they're trying to address. So I think Tim may have a view on this.
Tim.
Well, in relation to air quality, I'm not sure that there's any immediate works that can be done. The worst thing in the world that could be done is traffic calming. You want to keep the traffic running smoothly to avoid air quality issues. So really removing heavy goods vehicles off Buxton Hill is the solution to the air quality issue in the longer term. Traffic calming measures elsewhere in the town or traffic management issues elsewhere in the town won't necessarily impact on that, but will impact on the general usability of the town. We all know, I think, that Ashbourne does get very snarled up with traffic on many of its routes. The other thing to consider is that although we use the word immediately, that the county council are under no obligation to do what we suggest.
Do you still want that amendment, Councillor?
If I come back, Chair, immediately, we immediately can in itself be interpreted, unfortunately, in a variety of ways. But we think of it tomorrow. The county council will probably think of it as over the next few years. But to me, immediately conveys a sense of urgency, which I think reflects our position.
Are you still okay with that, Councillor Purdy?
Yes, I am, Chair. I'm just wondering if we ought to be actually a bit more specific and after the word "immediately," comma, especially to address the HGV issue.
Are you okay with that, Councillor O'Brien? Yeah, okay.
The seconder happy with that?
Yeah, the seconder, Councillor Morley.
Yeah, happy with that, Chair. Thank you. Very
Good,
positive.
thank you. I've got 3 other speakers, but we are sort of getting behind on time. Do you still want to speak, Councillor Wayne, Donnelly and Paulie, or can we go to the vote?
Yes, I'd just like to make a quick comment.
Okay.
I think whatever we do with this issue, once we get to the point where the county council are thinking of taking forward and getting quotes and figures for this whole scheme that might not even be funded in the end, we should certainly not be offering any money towards doing that kind of work unless we get some kind of indication that the Watery Lane site they'll move on that.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillors Wayne and Donnelly. Do you still want to speak?
Fleetingly, if I can, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Wayne.
Just very, very, very quickly. Yes, I appreciate Councillor O'Brien's amendment and will be supportive of that. What I'm concerned about is just in option 3, which is recommendation 1, we are technically voting for 2 possibilities, 2 options within that. That's 2,100 metres and 2,800 metres. It does say that to have the 2,800, it does take it further away from properties in the area. So can we specify which our preferential one would be within that when we respond, please? Thank you.
Councillor Wayne, have you anything to add quickly?
I just have, Chair.
Oh, okay. Fine. Okay, that's all the speakers finished. I've nobody left, so we are now going.
Donnelly, Chair. Sorry,
Councillor
Councillor
Donnelly. I beg your pardon, Councillor Donnelly. Crossed the wrong one out.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me speak. I should be very, very brief. Yeah, considering that somebody like myself has lived in Ashbourne for about 60 years, this has been a topic of debate for many, many years, and it seems that no government or MPs have ever got to the bottom of it. And at the same time, we're not to know seem to be developing much further. But the point is that at least now we've got something on the table that's never been there to my knowledge. And my option would be option 3, Western route. I think this has been the one that's been on the go for a long, long time. And I think it would be the benefit that all the HTVs coming through Ashbourne. I think one of the problems that has happened a lot of years in Ashbourne of the HTVs is when they put a new bridge in on the 515 at Finney Bentley, which enabled bigger and HTVs to come through there, as it originally was only a 15-foot bridge. And I think now more and more as these HTVs are coming through Ashbourne, that's been added to the problem, I'm afraid. But from a personal point of view, I will support Western Route A. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, and apologies for missing you there. So can we now move? Can we move to the
Chair? Can we not have clarification on Councillor Wayne's point, reasonable point about the 2 options for under recommendation 1, either the longer route, the 2,800 metre one, or the 2,100 metre route? So I think that's what you're seeking clarification of.
Paul, can you answer that one?
Chair, well, clearly members can express a preference if you feel you've got enough information before you at the moment to identify which of those routes would be most appropriate. Clearly, they will both have advantages and disadvantages. The way that officers have approached this is just to look at the general principle of east and west rather than the actual detail. But should members wish to go into further detail, you're quite within your liberty to do that.
Okay, James, could you just read out the revised proposal, please, so everybody's sure of the wording?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So, in respect of recommendations 1 and 2, it is as printed on the report. In respect of recommendation 3, Councillor Purdy has amended the recommendation in light of the comments from Councillor O'Brien. So it now reads that the District Council advises Derbyshire County Council that it considers that in order to improve both traffic and environmental conditions within Ashbourne Town Centre in the short to medium term, mitigation measures should be implemented immediately, especially to address HGV issues.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Purdy?
I am, Chair, and I'm just revisiting 2.4 or 2.5 on Councillor Wayne's point, 2.5. I think it's splitting hairs, quite frankly. If we just adopt the Western route, we're still a long way off this matter coming to tarmac on the ground. So I think it's semantic. I think we just go with the recommendations instead of splitting hairs on whether it's 2,100 metres or 2,800.
Okay. Jason, can we go to the vote now, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Councillor Buckler.
Aye.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Burford.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Campbell.
Abstain.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Pawley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
Councillor Wakeman.
4.
That's 15 for and 2 abstentions, Chair.
Thanks, Jason. That's approved. So we move to item 7, which is the Brailsford Neighbourhood Plan. Mike, please, if you'd run us through that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As the report sets out, the Brailsford Neighbourhood Plan has been in preparation for a number of years now. We've now reached the formal consultation stage on that plan, and that consultation stage runs now until Monday. It's a 6 weeks period of public consultation. Similar with the Ashborne Bypass, we are effectively a consultee on the neighbourhood plan, and what we're setting out in the report is those areas where we feel as officers the district council should be presenting its representations to the examiner as the next stage of the plan preparation process. As with all of these neighbourhood plans that we have had before us in previous times, there are elements of the plan which are good, there are elements of the plan which need a little bit of improvement, and there are elements of the plan which as a district council we feel we should be making representations on. And this is no different to the others. And I'm quite happy to take any questions that members might have.
Thank you, Mike. I can't see any questions down here. James, have you got any there?
No, I don't see any hands up, Chairman. Councillor Ratcliffe's just put his hand up, actually.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Well, actually, it was to move to adopting this report, and I move that we take it and we welcome it as yet another arm of our planning at a local level, as it were. I mean, if you want, I won't actually ask a direct question, but in my sort of comments, I would say that I did note that one of the things that Mike brought out again was the conformity that this would have to have with EU obligations. And of course, I wonder about, given the fact that this won't be approved until 2021, by which time we shall have well and truly left the union, whether they would still apply. But in general comment, well, of course, it's yet another plan in a sense that began by having local aspirations that unfortunately went a bit beyond the remit of neighbourhood planning. It sought, in some respects, to try and control the development at Brailsford. And given the size of the expansion of that village that has been brought about by our own local plan, it's not surprising. And of course, that expansion has brought both benefits and disbenefits. Interesting too that this is a local neighbourhood plan for a village that again sits astride an extremely busy trunk road, the A52. But given all that, I think the outcomes will be beneficial, and I'm sure the involvement, as it were, in its preparation again has been, dare I say, therapeutic for those residents and villagers that have taken a part. So I think it's to be welcomed, and I hope it does prove to be of use and benefit alongside both our own local plan and indeed wider planning guidance for applications in that village. I know my own Wirksworth one certainly has, and I've had no regrets about the efforts that went into the production of that.
We're supposed to be questions first, Councillor, but I'll take that as moving the motion from you. Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just put a bit of clarity on this, because Councillor Ratcliffe was stating about approving adoption of this, and as I see it at the moment, this is actually saying that we want to present it further and then have the come back to a committee again with the examiner's report on it. So we're not actually adopting the actual neighbourhood plan itself at the moment. We're just progressing it onto the next phase, I believe. Can that just be clarified, please?
So if I can come back to that one. Councillor Bull is quite correct. The next stage is for the neighbourhood plan to go to examination. The representations, if the recommendations are accepted this evening that are set out in the report, will be sent to that examiner. The examiner then will consider the representations that we and others make to him, and then we'll come up with a recommendation as to how to proceed. And the report sets out that the options are to either proceed to referendum, or ultimately, if it's not felt to meet all the statutory requirements, to be refused. My hedge is that it will be the middle ground, which is B, where we get a report which says with modifications that the neighbourhood plan can move towards referendum. That referendum potentially could be held in May, subject to COVID and the legislation still being allowing that to happen.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question. I would like to second the motion if I may, but you'll tell me whether I can do that or not, Chair.
Well, it sounds as though we're into debate now anyway, so I'll take that as a second.
Well, if you would, and just in so doing, can I pay tribute to the neighbourhood, the Brailsford and Longford Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group and the PC, because this is into its third or fourth iteration. And I was going to move it, but I will, of course, bow to the wisdom of who's becoming our neighbourhood plan guru, Councillor Ratcliffe, and Mike Hayes' assistance as well, because I happen to know that representatives from the parish council have been up to Matlock to meet with Mr. Hayes. So well done on a good job, and I'm sure his instinct will be right. So it's seconded.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Donnelly.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, my question's been answered. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I want to endorse Tony Morley's point, actually. There's a lot of hard voluntary work has gone into this plan, and I think the neighbourhood plan group may be a bit discouraged by the response from the district council. That's not to say that it's not a valid response, but I think that they may be a little bit discouraged. And can I suggest that rather than just the very formal response as written in the recommendations, we reflect in our response to them the sentiments that Tony Morley and others have raised, that we do formally thank them and welcome their initiative, rather than just the formality of the two recommendations, which is very, very dry.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Morley's already referred to all the work that's gone on in the community with this, and he was probably a little bashful to praise the work of Councillor Michelle Morley, the ward member, who I know has worked extremely hard with the members of the community in this. And I certainly look forward to the further report coming back with the examiner's views. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nobody else waiting to speak, so can we move to the vote, please, Jason?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Furness.
For.
Councillor Campbell.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes. Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
Sorry, that's my dog voting. I'm for.
Councillor Pawley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Wakeman.
4.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Mike, you're relieved now if you wish to go. Thanks very much for your help.
Thank you, Chair.
Item 8 is the community asset transfer, Denefields and Matlock. Mike Galsworthy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I can't see any questions yet. Have you got any there, James?
Yes, Councillor Mrs. Pawley was first with her hand up and Councillor Burford followed her.
Councillor Pawley.
Yes.
Is it a question? Is it a question,
Yeah,
Councillor
it
Pawley?
is.
Oh, good.
Believe it
Thank
or
you.
not, it's a question.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the size of the site. We're talking. We are now on 8. Yeah, the site at Denefields. I was just looking at the size of the site on the plan and thinking about our decision to go for working with housing associations to build our own housing sites. And looking at it is quite substantial. So my question is this land suitable and would it get planning consent to take housing? Because if it is, I think I'd like to defer this until we have a thought about whether we or not we could use this as part of our own assets to build our own housing on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can't really answer on the planning issue. I don't know whether anyone else could comment on that, any of the other officers, but the site has been let for a number of years on a basically a stewardship, environmental stewardship scheme, and that's the proposal here. I think it's very unlikely that it would be suitable for housing development, but I don't know that for a fact.
Chair, could I come back then?
Yeah, okay.
Could I ask that we defer this then until we do know whether or not it would be suitable for housing or whether it would get possibly get planning consent, because we're going to get to the point where we're going to need land to put houses on, and this land looks of a substantial size.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burford.
Yes, I'd like to strongly oppose what Mrs. Pawley has just suggested. It would be absolutely appalling decision. There's no access, no vehicle access to the site except through the football and cricket grounds. But my question, I want to make a statement as well, but my question is to do with recommendation 4. A district council undertake and pay for public open space consultation on this site. What exactly would that entail? Can I ask that, please?
Yes, through you, Chair. It's a legal requirement for a disposal such as this, although it's only a 20-year lease. We are required to conduct public open space advertising. So what that entails is normally an advert in the local press, just stating what we intend to do with the land, basically. So in this case, it would say that it would be let on a 20-year lease to the town council for as an environmental stewardship scheme, and then the public can then respond to that if anyone has any objections, and if there's any serious objections, we can bring those back to a future committee. I wouldn't expect to have any in a case such as this, but it is people's legal right to do that, and that's the legal advice that we've received.
Thank you, Mike.
We will return your call. Good evening, Chris. It's Heathy. Could you give me a call, please?
Councillor
94327.
I'm sorry, I accidentally muted myself. I think it's Councillor Hughes next. Councillor Hughes, you're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. Thank you, Chair. I'm worried by. I think actually, but my point is more one for debate. So, would it be better for me to leave it now rather than to bring it in?
Yeah, if you leave it, if it's a debate item, leave it and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, yeah.
Councillor Wayne.
I'm afraid I'm likewise, Chair. It's just more comment than question. Thank you.
Okay, well, we've nobody else down for questions, so I'll go back to Councillor Burfoot. Did you want to make a statement? You said, I think.
Definitely do. Yes.
Could I just ask? Could I
Thank you.
just ask a question as a follow-up to what I said, please, Chair?
Ask the question to
you about me suggesting that we defer the item till the next meeting. You didn't pick up on that, and I wonder how does procedure progress if a member has asked for something to be deferred? Should we not vote on it?
Well, no, you would need to have a second. You would need to have a second.
Would anybody? Could I ask then if anybody would second? I'm quite sure nobody will, but can I ask if they will?
Does anybody want to volunteer to second an amendment, a deferment? No, doesn't sound like it, Councillor Pauling.
Councillor Statham has his hand up, Chair.
Oh, Councillor Statham, did you want to second a deferment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will second that deferment. Just pick up on Councillor Burfoot's remark about vehicle access. As far as I'm aware, there is no vehicle access from the football ground or the cricket ground. I do know that there is vehicle access to it from Chesterfield Road from the top. So yeah, that'll just put you straight on that. But yeah, I'm happy to second the deferment. Thank you.
Councillor Burfoot, your statement, please.
Yeah, I'm absolutely appalled by that suggestion. I have to make it clear to members that this historic and very, very special site has been maintained under the environmental stewardship scheme that Mike Goldsworthy pointed out for many, many years since the 1990s. And I was party as a member of the town council at the time to setting that up. And that followed years of neglect by this council, unfortunately. So I was party to its adoption, and for many volunteers surveyed and interpreted the fields and procured grants for improvements, especially to the public rights of way that crossed the site over all these years. And not only myself, but the town council committed itself to taking on a local or a Derbyshire-based environmental group to organise what are called the Denefields Rangers, who actually maintain the site. They meet every week and carry out works. They have done for the past 10 or 15 years on this land. They do conservation works at considerable cost, as I say, to the town council. And they carried out interpretation works with signage. They've excavated ponds, they've laid hedges, etc., etc. So I would strongly recommend a visit by councillors. It's no use talking about a possibility of having houses on this site when you've no idea what it looks like. It's an absolutely superb haven of wildlife conservation and biodiversity. And it needs to be visited, it needs to be seen to be believed. And it's just above the, as has been pointed out, the Matlock Town football and cricket clubs. But an access through there, obviously, there has been approaches before. There have been approaches by supermarkets. I think Matlock Town Football Club wanted to build on it at one time, build stands and so on, but that was all rejected at the time. And I would strongly oppose any proposal for deferment tonight, never mind any proposal to investigate it for building of houses, because the only access, as has been pointed out, would be through the Matlock Town Football Club ground or cricket ground. And that wouldn't really be feasible in terms of maintaining those particular uses in the town centre. So I strongly recommend the recommendations as proposed. But I mean, obviously, it is a bit ironic to look at under paragraph 3.1, the various recommendations to the town council, as if they don't do these things already. I mean, I understand the procedural points and technicalities of asking a parish or town council to undertake these works, but this has all been done by Matlock Town Council over the last 25 years. So I don't think that would be any different in the future. And it's just a formality really to transfer this to Matlock Town Council. So I'd strongly support the recommendations.
Deferment has now been proposed and seconded, so we have to debate the deferment and then vote on it. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it is really on that particular amendment that I would like to oppose on the same grounds as Councillor Burfoot. The site is a very steeply sloping site. To turn it into a building site would require a large amount of work. It's a site that is used constantly by people walking from Hurst Farm to the centre of Matlock. It provides footpaths from the town centre, 2 sets of footpaths from the town centre into Hurst Farm, and it is an open space within what is quite an urban area now, with 500 houses to the east in Hurst Farm and the rest of Matlock to the west, houses to the north, and so on. It's an open space that provides a lung into the centre of Matlock. It provides there are places on the site for children to investigate nature that have been prepared by the volunteers, and there are in those locations there are all sorts of creatures, dragonflies and so on, can be seen above ponds. It would be a disgrace, absolute disgrace, and to turn this into another housing development. Matlock is already open spaces in Matlock are already being used for houses. The Treetops development in further up the hill was another open space that was used by many people walking their dogs and in other ways, children playing football and so on. And that has been turned into houses, into 80 odd houses, some of which are affordable, admittedly. Matlock is losing its open spaces. This one is absolutely essential to the centre of Matlock. Thank you.
Councillor Buckle, just to remind you, we are debating deferment now.
Yeah, and my responses are the same as Councillor Burfoot and Councillor Hughes. It's a critical part of the green infrastructure of Matlock, and the reason that this report has come to this committee now is because the Denefield Rangers group have just been awarded funding to undertake works, which would include works on Denefields. And it would be an incredibly depressing state of affairs that we were looking at when we were considering this for housing development.
Chair.
Councillor Bull.
Chair.
I'm going through the list I've got here.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
I just wondered
Councillor
if,
Bull.
to save time at the meeting, is there any facility for me to withdraw my suggestion of deferment then now?
If you wish.
Yeah, I think having listened to the people, the members who are close to it, I only put it forward because I know we need land for housing.
Is the second okay with that? Who said? I can't remember who seconded it now.
I did, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to take it back.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're now debating the main motion again. Councillor Bull.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, that's been taken off the table, but I just wanted just a bit of clarification, because obviously, with what was initially proposed for deferment and maybe to have building, obviously it's got the public open space order I take already on it. So I would have thought it is in a similar situation as regards what Ashbourne Recreation Ground is, in the fact that, you know, we want it to be kept as a public open space, and the lights for that to be on. So that was my comments to that issue. Thank you.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm grateful for Councillor Pauly for withdrawing, because I really would have opposed it. Yes, we have got to build houses, and yes, there are green spaces in all areas in the country, not just Matlock, that are being taken up. But that's a necessity because of the requirement of people that have not got homes. The other requirement, of course, is to protect our green open spaces, and therefore I'm happy with these recommendations as is, Chair.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I was just following really from Councillor Bull. because it does say that it will be continue to be used as a public open space, and it is a 20-year lease. So presumably nothing would be able to occur during that 20-year lease. Thank you.
We haven't had the main recommendations proposed or seconded yet. Would you prefer to do that, Councillor Hobson?
Yes, I'm happy as long as it is the 20-year lease, which obviously is at 3-1. I'm happy to propose.
Can somebody second that?
I'll second it, Chair.
Okay, well, there's nobody else to speak, Jason, so if you can go to the vote, please.
Sorry, Chair, I think Councillor Wayne and Councillor Burford have got their hands up.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'll come back to you again then, Councillor Wayne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to move it, but been beaten to it, but never mind.
Okay.
I just wish to thank Councillor Pawley for listening to what's been said, and I echo the comments. Basically, my main issue would have been flooding from that site, and it's more development on the hillsides above Matlock causing the town centre to flood. But common sense has prevailed, and I shall be supporting the motion. Thank you very much.
So who was the other one who had their hand up, James, did you say? Councillor Burford?
I think it was Councillor Burford, but he did second it, so I don't know whether he wished to speak again or whether we can just go to the vote.
Do you wish to speak again, Councillor Burford?
I just wanted to second the proposal.
Okay,
very strongly. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to the vote then, please, Jason.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Buckler.
4.
Councillor Bull.
4.
Councillor Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Donnelly.
4.
Councillor Finesse.
4.
Councillor Gamble.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
4.
Councillor Hughes.
4.
Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor O'Brien.
4.
Councillor Pawley.
4.
Councillor Purdy.
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Statham.
4.
Councillor Sutton.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
And Councillor Wakeman.
4.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to call a few minutes break now, so we'll break off and meet again at 7:40. That's 20 to 8. Thank you. We've got a few still missing, so I'll hang on for a minute or two. It's Councillors Butler and O'Brien. Are you there, or have you just forgotten to switch your cameras on?
Well, Councillor Butler's just an observer, Chair.
Oh, right, okay.
So perhaps we ought to move on.
Yeah, okie doke. So the next item is another community asset transfer at Tansley. Mike, please.
Sorry, can I just correct? Oh, here he is.
Thank you, Chair. Just one item to add to the report. Just as a result of the consultation, all of the ward members are supportive of the recommendation in this report. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I can't see any questions. Can you, James?
No hands up at the present moment, Chair. I'll just give it 1 second.
Are there any questions? If not, we'll go into debate.
There's no hands up for questions, Chair. Councillor Hughes has just put his hand up.
Councillor Hughes, is this a question? Councillor Hughes?
Sorry, I was muted. No, I'd like to move to debate and move the motion.
Yeah, that's fine.
As a ward member.
Good, that's great. Okay.
I would say that this will give the parish council confidence that they will be able to continue to use the space as a recreation ground over the forthcoming period. And there are provisions within the recommendations that if the parish council wish to change the use or sell the land, then there is a preemptive right for the district council to purchase the land back for the same amount as it's selling the land at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burfoot.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to formally second the recommendation.
James, I can't see anybody else. Can you?
No, there's no other hands up at the moment, Chair.
Okay, well, it's been moved and seconded, so can we go to the vote, please, Jason?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Butler?
For.
Councillor Ball?
For.
Councillor Burfoot?
For.
Councillor Donnelly?
For.
Councillor Finesse?
For.
Councillor Gamble?
For.
Councillor Hobson?
For.
Councillor Hughes?
For.
Councillor Morley?
For.
Councillor O'Brien?
For.
Councillor Pawley?
For.
Councillor Purdy?
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe?
For.
Councillor Statham?
For.
Councillor Sutton?
For.
Councillor Wayne?
For.
Councillor Wakeman?
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thanks, Jason. We'll move on to item 10, which is the Derbyshire Clause procedure. Lee, if you'll talk us through that, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I think most of the issues are contained in the report, but just to summarise the issues, the legal department deal with any application for dispensations from the Derbyshire Clauses. Under the current constitution, the officers have authorisation to approve any applications that meet the criteria. However, if they don't meet the criteria fully, then all decisions should be referred to members. This is causing a great deal of delay to those who wish to buy and those that wish to sell, which has resulted in a backlog, especially with the current issues of trying to get papers through committee, but also a lot of complaints from those involved at how long this is taking. To try and, in effect, speed up the process, what I'm seeking to do is ask members to review a policy that I've written and to give delegated authority to officers to make those decisions. However, I didn't want to exclude members completely. Therefore, I would seek the members to approve and give officers guidance and the parameters on which they wish to make those decisions, but also allow anyone that's dissatisfied then to appeal that decision to members to have, in effect, a second look if they don't like that. I've recommended that this be done by the Licensing and Appeals Committee, generally because they already have subcommittees set up and the process available to deal with appeals. If we left it with this committee, then we will be waiting for a full committee, thus putting further delay on to people wishing to buy and sell properties. And being that the conveyancing process can take 3 or 4 months anyway, it's causing extra and further delay into the process. To take us through the general recommendations, of course, one is to consult on the policy, which I'll come back to in a minute, to delegate to the legal department and all its officers to be able to make these decisions. The reason behind that is the more people this is delegated to, again, the quicker the decisions can be made. As I explained, the delegation to the Licensing and Appeals Committee. Delegation 4, council can charge for any discretionary service it provides, being that if people wish to apply for a dispensation, which the council doesn't have to grant, going through the process, gathering the evidence, considering it takes a lot of officer time, and therefore we would seek to recover our charges for that. I've also, when undertaking this paper, done a full review of the delegations that we have, and I consider on 5 and 6, as I've detailed in the paper, that some of these delegations to grant dispensations seem to be disproportionate, and as I explained, so 5 and 6 to do that. The issue on number 7, that is withdrawn from the report. The theories behind that was to seek members' views on whether or not they wish this to be looked at further. Clearly, prior to the meeting, that members wish this to be looked into further, so I wish to withdraw that delegation. Just to quickly go back to the policy, I say I've drafted this up looking at other councils' policies and also taking into consideration some of the issues that arise. And I would actively seek members' comments on a number of issues. And just to highlight 3, 3.341, what I've had before is people claiming that they've had a local connection to the area, saying that they've been born here and grew up here, but actually when I've questioned them further, they've lived here, they were born here, they lived till they're 5 and now they're 65 years old and they've never been back to the area at all. So I put in a sort of proviso of 3 years out of 10. Now members might think that's quite restrictive, might want to give them more time, might want to remove that completely, but that's the theory behind that one. At clause 353, I put in about active service, whether someone here has come and served their country and done that in the Derbyshire area and wants to come back and live here, whether members would want to actually include that as one of the things we would take into consideration. Again, up to members whether or not they wish to see that. And also at 563, we previously wanted properties to be marketed for 6 months. But being that the comments I'm getting back are people feeling trapped, whether or not 6 months was too long, so I've put in 4. And also, we've never had any type of policy on whether or not we'd grant dispensation to people we consider to be key workers. I've seen other councils have had that in, so I've added that into the policy. Again, I seek your views on whether or not that possible. The reason behind this policy is to give as much information to people buying and selling the Derbyshire Clause policies to know what we would expect, what evidence we want, whether or not it's worth them applying in the first place, and also to try and completely speed up this process to give them a decision as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gamble, is this a question?
Yeah, it is in a way. It's sort of a procedural question. It's something I was talking about with James earlier that I didn't really get to do a fully email because of the meeting. We talked about the possibility if I wanted to actually just put a slight amendment on recommendation 2, that in addition to the customer services, legal services, with consultation with the ward member. When would I need to do that? Sorry.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Gamble. You would do that when we move to the debate. So assuming that the recommendations are proposed as printed, if you wanted to propose an amendment to do that, that would be at the point that the recommendations have been proposed and seconded.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Chair, yes, two questions. I note, Lee, that you've said that this issue causes a lot of work for officers. In addition to the 3 applications we're looking at this evening, could you tell me how many applications have come to committee since May 2019? And my second question is, given that there's a fair amount of discretion within the policy, there are guidelines. There's a lot of discretion given to the council. Are you confident that as officers you feel able to exercise that discretion on behalf of the council?
To take those questions in turn, as far as I know, none. There were previous procedure that once legal had looked at that and realised that the criteria was not met, that was then referred up to Sandra Lamb as head of department, and then she decided whether or not to take it to members or not. When looking at the Constitution, I believe that all decisions should go to members if it doesn't meet that criteria. So as far as I know, I don't believe any since I've started in May last year have been referred up. I don't know of anything off of that. When it comes to discretion, then yes, officers do have that capacity. The policy is giving you the guidelines. The issue of whether or not people disagree, then they have the chance to appeal to you if they disagree with our decision. And again, if you're getting decisions through that are being appealed that you are not happy with, then that means the opportunity to come back and ask officers to again look at the policy and amend it as you wish. It's within your discretion. So I don't have any issues with officers making those decisions. This is now the 5th authority that I've worked for, and these type of decisions are usually delegated down to officers with a clear policy from members on how they want officers to exercise that discretion. Again, this is a consultation stage on the policy, so if you think that any of the discretion is too wide, then please put forward your comments and I can review the policy online with your comments to see whether or not to make anything more prescriptive.
If I could just come back briefly, Chair. So without trying to be funny, it does seem strange that, Lee, you say that the reason behind this delegation is because of the amount of work that officers are under, and then you say there hasn't actually been any work since May 2019.
No, Councillor Brown, what I said is no reports went to committee. It doesn't mean that in the background that officers are going back to members of the public that have made inquiries, because there's no guidance on the website to say when or not the council would exercise that discretion. There's no guidance on what documents, so officers are getting, say, a short email in, they're having to go back saying this is the information we need, we're then having to bring it back, we're then having to consider it. If it grants, we're then having to give the letter out. Just because no report has come to committee doesn't mean that it's not going through a large amount of work. To give you an example, to write this report and go through all the backlog of queries and requests took me about 4 days, going through of everyone, emailing, making sure they still want to bring a report to committee, asking them to submit further information. And we're getting this on a regular basis. So just because you're not seeing the work doesn't mean the work is not being done.
So are you saying there have been or there haven't been any applications since May 2019 other than these 3?
There's been a number of applications. I don't have the exact figures, but they've been withdrawn or not taken further.
Who is determined? So they haven't been determined then?
Well, what's happened is most of the applicants, because it's been taking so long, has withdrawn their application because they didn't get this decision in time, or that they've lost the sale on the property, which has then resulted in complaints to the legal department and sometimes up to through the corporate complaints procedure that these have not been decided quick enough, which is hence why I am bringing a policy to try and speed up the decision-making process. Being that is one of our corporate aims, to give very good customer service, and I don't think that the constant delays in making these decisions are doing that.
Councillor Wayne, is yours a question? Councillor Wayne?
Yes, it most certainly is. Thank you.
Good.
Just in relation to the timescales, when people engage in this process and they buy a property that's got a Derbyshire clause on it, it's rather clear to see that it's a clause. So do you feel that 4 months is realistic and proportionate, or is it due to COVID? I mean, is 6 months better? I mean, 6 months trying to sell a house, people know very well that if you've got a clause on it, it may take a bit longer. I'm a bit more, feel more comfortable with the 6 months rather than the 4 months. But what's your rationale about making it 4 months? Is it due to COVID that people have been more uneasy? Thank you.
Councillor Wayne, as I say, that's one of the reasons I highlighted that as an issue, is the reason that, I mean, it's previously been 6 months, but quite a lot of the complaints are, and you'll see that from some of the reports that are coming later, it's that people feel they're trapped and it's been like over a year and they've not been able to sell anything. And my thought process behind it was quite simply that if it's been on the market for a number of months, they're not getting any bites, they've dropped the price and still not getting anywhere. Once you add in the process to try and get a decision, you're then talking about going through the conveyancing process, which could be another 3 or 4 months. You could end up with someone being trapped in a property for a year plus. And I'm just trying to figure a way of speeding up the process as quickly as possible. So 4 is just a suggestion. If members are more happy than 6, 8, 10, it's up to members. You direct me how you wish me to make those decisions, and the legal team. So that's totally up for comment or discussion, but that was the rationale, was trying to make things a lot quicker, especially with people not really wanting to buy these properties because it's taking so long to sell, which is then again trapping the people that owe these properties in those properties. And those are the issues I'm hearing from the buyers, the sellers, the estate agents, and that's why I've brought this report forward.
Councillor Hughes, is there a question?
Yes, sorry about the delay. Yes, it is, Chair. On recommendation 2, I gather that you're proposing that either any one of the 4 people mentioned in can make a decision, a delegated decision. One of them it being somebody who is perhaps not a member of an officer in the council. Is that correct? But what will be the outcome of this? Do you think it will be that the person who has that it will be delegated down to the person with the least authority to make the decision. I'm a bit worried that the Director of Corporate and Customer Service will never be involved, because the decisions, he never needs to be involved in accordance with recommendation 2. And the recommendation 2 just seems to indicate that either the principal solicitor or solicitor would be the person that was making the decision.
Chair, can I answer that just to give some certainty to members? If there is a decision to be made, I would expect that if I'm available, in the office at work, that I would be making that decision. So it would be me discharging that delegated authority. I think for the other officers listed on there, and just to confirm, they all are officers of the council. There wouldn't be any external person making a decision here. That would be if I was unavailable, either through leave, sickness, or whatever it might be. So I would expect that I would be signing off a decision in respect of any of the applications, subject to the provisions of whatever policy council agrees in due course.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pauly, yours is the last question I've got before we go into debate.
Just a question. Could I just ask, considering that recommendation 7, which now has been withdrawn, which was for the sale of these clauses, came out of the same office that's written the rest of the report. When we're looking at 2.4, which says that we're going to delegate decisions to officers that are mentioned in recommendation 2, do you think there might be a bias towards leniency rather than to administer these regulations quite strictly? Because if you've already suggested that we might sell the clauses, which has now been withdrawn, I've got a feeling there might be a tendency in your thinking towards getting through this quickly by not questioning in a too difficult a way. Could you just reassure me that that's not the case?
Well, thank you, Councillor Pauly, but no, that's of course. And again, as I'm going back with the issue of the policy, if you want to make it more restrictive on what officers and discretions can apply, the 3 main people, other than James there, that I've seeking the delegation to, which of course we would then pass through him to sign off, are all legal officers that are of a number of years core that's used to applying policy and procedures in making their decisions. So I don't have any discretion on that. With regards to the issue, and just I'm glad you've raised it just so that I can address it. The issue with number 7 was, when I produce a report, I wish to give members all the potential options available. There was no procedure or any consideration that to deal with Derbyshire clauses, the potential of selling that, I checked it out legally and can find no reason, is an option which I felt I would be remiss if I didn't put it to members to say this was an option. What I expected from that was either for you members to say we're happy to go ahead, or no, we've got no political will for this, or to actually ask to look into this a bit further. There was nothing behind that other than this was a potential option which I presented to members and I feel duty bound to do.
Yeah, well, I'm quite willing to leave it up to our officers because I know that they always do a good job, but I just wanted to make that clear in public. Thank you very much.
No trouble, thank you.
We're into debate now. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm pleased to hear what Councillor Pauly has just said, because it seems to be that some members are questioning the integrity of our officers, and that worries me, quite frankly. I have to question what this has got to do with members. I'm at a bit of a loss to understand this, because if I was selling my property with a clause on it, what's it got to do with the ward member for this area? I'm prepared to go and say, if you, Lee, you want to refer to ward members, I think that's the limit, quite frankly. This is necessary. People have lost sales. They've lost very important amounts of monies. Selling a house, moving house, is the second most stressful incident in a person's life, next to death. Probably marriage is worse, I don't know, but there we go. But the fact is, it's an almighty stressful period for anybody to go through. And then to have a clause put on it, which causes the loss of the sale, it must be heart-wrenching for these people. And my heart goes out to them. So I agree with Lee, this needs speeding up, it needs simplifying, and I'm happy with the recommendations, Chair. I note the withdrawal of 7. Perhaps if we introduce to bring a further report back to a future C&E meeting might be appropriate.
So you've moved that then, Councillor?
I have, Chair, yeah.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, thank you, Lee, for bringing this report before the committee. I welcome this consultation stage. The current system's obviously not providing good customer service, and delegation to officers would minimise delay. I note the members would still be involved in any appeals process, and I think that's very important. I am concerned that sales are falling through, and it's causing a great deal of stress in these circumstances to sellers and buyers alike. I would like to see a clear and transparent procedure so that everybody knows exactly what all the rules and regulations are, and the guidelines will be held to account. Thank you.
Are you seconding that, Councillor?
I am indeed.
Okay. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I speak, if I could correct Councillor Purdy, if he doesn't mind me doing this. People who own houses with a Derbyshire Clause buy the house knowing that there is a Derbyshire Clause. So I think it's unreasonable to say that they are surprised when it comes to selling the house. I understand that there are always individual circumstances which may cause rise to anguish and distress, but anyone with a clause on their house is fully aware of it when they buy it. I want to propose what I don't really like doing this, but I want to propose an amendment to the recommendation, because what we have in the report, in section 5 of the report, is the suggestion that we should offer for sale the Derbyshire clauses. Now, this is not actually in the draft new policy, but it is a proposal within the report. So I'm a little bit confused there. So what I would like to propose is put forward an amendment, is that we remove the entirety of section 5 of the report from any future policy. And the reason I'm putting forward this amendment is that I would challenge any one of us to find where in our corporate or service plan there's a reference to enabling the stock of 863 affordable homes in the national park to become market homes and therefore out of reach of local families. As you've heard me say on many times since 2019, there are very, very few opportunities for local families to be able to afford to buy a house in the national park, and the Derbyshire Clause is one of the 2 options open to them. The other is the Section 106 agreement, which is imposed by the Peak District National Park, and that actually requires a 10-year association with your local parish, so the Derbyshire Clause is far more lenient than that. And it would be a nonsense if this council moved in the completely opposite direction to the Peak District National Park as far as its housing policy is concerned. The provision of affordable homes is one of our top priorities, if not our top priorities as a council. And on Monday, we agreed to invest millions of our resources of our capital programme in providing more affordable homes. We now have a proposal before us, a suggestion before us, which is to abandon that policy in terms of the homes with a Derbyshire Clause, which are 863 affordable homes in the district. I know well villages like Baslow, Stony Middleton, Hallisage, Eam, and there is no evidence in my experience over many years of any long-term difficulty of people of disposing and selling houses with the Derbyshire clause associated with them. I would urge you to support that amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hughes, which recommendation are you amending?
Sorry.
Councillor O'Brien.
I beg your pardon, Councillor O'Brien. Which recommendation are you asking to be amended?
Recommendation 1, which is the one which asks us to consult on a new policy. Now, the policy itself actually makes no mention of this change to the the policy as drafted actually makes no reference to the selling of the Derbyshire clause, but section 5 of the report does. So it's a little bit confusing.
Clarify that.
Lee, have you got any comments on that?
Yeah, just on that point, Chair, just to clarify that the policy is purely about the decision-making process on whether to grant a dispensation and allow a sale of the property. It's got nothing to do with the actual proposal to sell the clause. That is completely separate. That was me putting an option forward for members to consider. If you say, for example, in the future agreed that this clause could be sold, that is something that could be offered. Therefore, the policy wouldn't apply because we wouldn't be applying the dispensation. And that's why it's not mentioned at all in the policy.
So, Councillor O'Brien, do you still wish to go ahead with your amendment? Having heard that?
No, I don't. But I can't understand why it was included in the report as an option for us to consider, but there's no recommendation for us to consider it. But no, I withdraw my amendment in that case.
Okay, thank you. Councillor,
can I say, Chair, that the points I've made still stand?
Okay. Councillor Gamble.
Actually, yeah, Councillor O'Brien's made an awful lot of a lot of the points I wanted to make. I think I wanted to reassure people this is not at all about not trusting officers. This is about trying to keep hold of a precious resource in the Peak Pot. I mean, other places in the Dales have all sorts of affordable housing, and local families have all sorts of access to lower priced properties. But in the Peak Pot, as Councillor O'Brien outlined, we only have 2, and to lose, if this ended up with losing 800 potentially affordable homes, I think that would be a tragedy for our area. So that's all it's about. And this wasn't at all wanting to undermine officers. This was really my aim in wanting to put something in to say to consult with ward members was to enable ward members just to bring that bit of local knowledge about their bit of the local housing market and how a decision might affect that. It wasn't going to try to undermine members or anything like that. That's all it was for. And otherwise, I think, us in the Peak Park, we are going to sit there, worrying how many houses are being lost to this. And also, I think to also stress the point, I think that the questions have been asked and by the answers given. Obviously, what hasn't slowed this process down at all is bringing this to a committee. This is the first committee anything like this has been brought to. So evidently, whatever else is holding up this process, it's not the committee. So I don't think that we should sort of ditch the committee element in the idea that that's slowing things up when it doesn't seem to be the case. If all these properties we're looking at tonight have been brought several times, and then they wouldn't. So I'll probably not get a second up, but I would like just to put forward just to propose an amendment for that to just have consultation with ward member, so that we can bring the issues of the local housing market to bear on what to admit is going to be a discretionary decision.
Would that be acceptable, Lee?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to consult with ward members and bring them in the process. The only reasons why I didn't do that in the first place is, again, it adds delay into the procedure as well. And also, what I was aiming for is to try and bring a consistent approach. And the more people that are putting their views in, I was hoping members would give us clear guidance through the policy on how they want us to make the decisions and apply the criteria. But if members wish to be consulted on any application we receive, the only proviso I would ask members to consider is that we would need a quick response from them so that we can keep with the whole issue of this and try and speed up the process.
Could I add something just
Can I just ask Councillor Purdy if he's okay with your suggested amendment, Councillor Campbell?
Chair, I did say in my little ramble that I was quite prepared to go with ward members. Yes, they have local knowledge. What I am concerned about is that it's not a matter of the sale, it's the matter that this clause is holding the sale up, and Lee's wanting to speed the process up. So I think if we add 2 after solicitor and in consultation with ward members. So if we add it 2, James, after solicitor, comma, together with consultation with ward members. And I'll be happy then to move the recommendations as is, Chair.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Gamble?
I was just going to add one little thing, which I hope will be helpful to Lee. What I'd be very happy with is, I can see obviously you want to speed. If you want to put a time limit on them, say, you know, to me, so that if a ward member hadn't come to you back within a week, then okay, then they lose that right. But something like that, if that makes that better for Lee.
If members are happy with that, I can ask members to respond within the week, or I'll make the decision or in consultation with James then, you know, if members are happy for that. As I say, I just want to make sure that the council's not getting complaints of things being held up. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Councillor Gamble. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. It was just simply to comment that I think the comments of Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Claire Gamble, I think have hit, for me, the nub of the whole report, which is, of course, the essence of and the purpose of the Derbyshire Clause. I served for a number of years on the old Partnership and Regeneration Committee and dealt with a number of these applications. Some we granted, some we didn't, but the overriding consideration was always going to be what effect might it have upon the affordable housing stock within the Peak Park. And that really is the overriding consideration still for me, you know, protecting that, because I think, as we all know, 106 affordable homes in that area are not replaced or developed quickly enough because of the park's own planning policies. I have to say, I was not aware on the P&R committee of any delays as such, but then again, they could have been in the background. It always seemed to work very well. So moving this now over to the licensing committee gave me some apprehension at first, but I do see that there'll be one distinct advantage of allowing applicants at appeal, etc., to go to the licensing, in that they can present themselves in person to give evidence and to bring along advocates on their behalf, as well as presenting documents to that committee, because that committee, of course, at the end of the day, acts in a sort of quasi-judicial role. So I think it's a very appropriate form to use, as it were. Overall, I think the amendments, with the exception, of course, of this initial decision to sell the clause that have been put forward by Lee, I think will actually be a benefit and will actually give, if you like, a better policy here. But as long as you know, it does remain in place and it is a protection for these homes, then I'm happy with it.
Councillor Hobson, I should have asked you if you were okay with the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I put my hand up to speak again as well.
Can I just say we have to get to item 11 before 8:30?
Right, I'm going to be really quick. All I just want to say is I'm happy with members to make their voices heard, but I would like to know, as we go through the consultation, I'm sort of concerned about members getting involved in something, you know, with people buying houses and having influence. I would like some more information from Lee when we go through to the next stage about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes, I've got you down, but I would just point out that we have to get to item 11 before 8:30. Otherwise we miss it.
Oh, it's okay, Councillor Furness, I withdraw.
Thank you. We've got nobody else to speak. It's been moved and seconded. Jason, can we have the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Butler.
Abstain.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Burford.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Furness.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
Abstain.
Councillor Pawley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
Wakeman's left.
All right, okay. So, Chair, that's 14 for and 2 again. 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Before we move to item 11, I'll just check with James. Do we need to vote now on continuing past 8:30?
Depending on how long it's going to take, I would recommend that we vote to get the business done tonight, Chair.
Yes, okay. So can we have, can somebody propose and second?
Yeah, I'll move that, Chair. Let's get it done.
Second? Somebody second?
I'm happy to second. Councillor Hobson.
Okay, can we have a show of hands? Is that enough, Jason?
That's
Yeah,
carried.
that appears, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Next item, item 11, is a Derbyshire Clause application. This is a bit complicated because the appendices are exempt. So I'm going to ask first Lee to talk through this in the public session, and then we'll move to go to exemption. And we have Councillor Swindles who wishes to speak, but since he's directly involved as ward member, he can't vote in this item. Thank you. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to clarify that part 1 of the report, I've justified why I consider that the appendices are exempt, generally because they contain financial and personal information given to me by the buyers and sellers, which I do not believe should be made public, but members need to make the decision. Members, of course, this goes back to the Derbyshire clauses we just discussed that are applied to these properties. These are 3 of the applicants that wish to take forward an application for you to determine they do not meet the criteria. Section 2.2 of the report specifies where the council has said that we will give dispensation, but they don't meet any of those. Members will see on the attached reports that I've generally put the comments that I've received both from sellers, buyers and estate agents. I've also given a rough indication, and I do stress the ways rough indications through using various websites which I've detailed that give an indication to members of what the current potential value of that property is, so that you can make a determination of whether or not they're trying to sell it at an inflated price, and therefore that's why they're finding it difficult to sell. But I do stress that it's just a general indication. It doesn't, I'm no estate agent that knows the details of the local market. I've used various websites that estimate through previous sale prices. So I do stress that. Members, generally what I would ask you now to do is to pass a motion to take this into a private session and then consider each appendix in turn on whether or not you're willing to allow the sale of the property to go through. Just to stress that if you agree to waive the clause, it doesn't remove the clause, it just waives it for one transaction. So the clause will stay on the property even if you approve the sale to go ahead, or in one case, I believe, to be marketed to a wider audience. So unless questions, Chair, prior to the private session.
Oh, we can have questions still, can we, on this?
If there's any questions that do not go into the detail of what's in the appendices, because of course that needs to be exempt. If it's just on the general Derbyshire clauses, then I'm happy to take questions. Or if you just want to move into a private session straight away, and then we can deal with these, the three applicants.
Well, I've got no questions down, so can somebody move that?
Yeah, I would like to move that we go into private session. Thank you. Exclude all members of the public.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we have a second?
I'll second that.
Can we have a show of hands? Are we okay there, Jason?
Yep, that appears to be unanimous. Chair, just give me a moment to end the stream.